can you make decisions today based on the future that you want to create, and honestly from the wisdom of the person that you are once you've already created this result. So in order to do that, a couple of things need to be in place. Number one, you have to have a vision of the future that you want.
Welcome to the Limitless Podcast, the show where women entrepreneurs become radically aware of their limiting beliefs, learn to value their worth, generate wealth, and to thrive as a magnetic brand leader. I'm your host, Jamie Ratermann, a six-figure holistic business coach. I've helped over 100 rebellious entrepreneurs master marketing, embody leadership, and say fuck it to the hustle. Let's dive in. Welcome, lovelies, to another episode of the Limitless Podcast. I cannot tell you how excited I am because today we have Jessica Uyeno on the podcast. And let me just tell you the story. I lovingly have a wonderful podcast editor. And I was like, you know what? I would really love to meet some other cool podcast hosts, and in particular, people who would really give a lot of value to my listeners. And she's been saying, we got to talk to Jessica. You got to talk to Jessica. And I've been able to listen into her podcast, Sincerely Future You, which by all means, it's going to be on my Spotify wrap for 2024. I have a feeling. But in general, I wanted to bring her on today because there's one thing that we overlook. I'm on here, I'm talking about Instagram strategies, of really being able to think about your purpose, what you want to do with your business. But at the end of the day, how well we use our time, how well we use our energy ends up being what allows us to hit those numbers we want, to feel the life that we're building through our business. So we're going to be talking about what truly gets in the way of using your time effectively. But let's officially introduce Jessica here to the Limitless listeners. So welcome, Jessica. Jessica is a money and CEO drama master, but I want to let her fully introduce herself. So Jessica, welcome to the podcast. Let's hear a little bit about you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I also really trust Daniela's opinion. You know, Danny's our girl. She also had edited my podcast back in the day. And when she had said, oh, I really think you and Jamie have some really similar missions out there, but you just kind of speak to different things to the same person, I was like, sign me up. Because, you know, I like at this point, we have so many people that are like wanting to get on the podcast all of the time. And it's really got to be a fit. We've got to make sure that like the people who are listening, thank you so much for just putting us in your ears right now. When I think about that, as someone who is so conscious of my time, like my time is so important. Even when I'm multitasking, I have so many different things that I could be listening to. I could be chatting with my mom on the phone. I could be listening to Pride and Prejudice, my book club book on Audible. But right, like you're choosing to listen to us right now. So you're being wise off the bat. I already know you're really great time management people listening to this podcast.
Spend your time wisely. We agree. We wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. So I am a life coach and a business coach, essentially, but those terms are so vague that I do like to say really what I help people do is I help people master their time, their money, and their CEO drama. I work with women, and to me, I always just hear, if it's not one thing, it's I don't have enough time. And if it's not the other thing, it's I don't have enough money to go after those dreams that you talk to your audience about all the time. Like, what is our purpose? What are we trying to do more of? What are we trying to become more of? And it's really easy for those two excuses to limit us all of the time. So while it all boils down to time and money, I think that everybody has a different way that they phrase it that feels less like an excuse to them. So I'm always looking for ways to help people see where they're getting in their own way, where they're telling themselves a story that they think is a fact about time, about their life, about their circumstances. And I'll be really excited to dive in. I wonder if you have even some listeners or some people in mind, some clients that we could even, or even yourself, we could talk about some examples of things that we're trying to do that and what's getting in the way.
Well, I feel like we've got a fantastic guest. She's talking about limits and self-imposed limits, and we're going to release them. That's perfect. Well, I think that's one thing. I end up working with entrepreneurs, and I think you do the same. And what it ends up being is that there's this idea that when you become your own boss, that it's, paradise island, like islands, like, we're not having to worry about anything. We do a little bit of work here and there, and this life is just so easy. And I think that, there's a lot of freedom that comes with this, but time, like the way you use your time, and actually, being motivated to use your time in the way that you plan to do it could be such a big deal. So for me, I'm a time blocker. I appreciate it. I love it. It saves me in the long run. Whenever someone tries to book a meeting, like on my calendar, make sure that it is in the right place usually. But within that, I think that I will encourage my clients to do the same. And I think it's really fun to kind of jump off the top here and say, I can set a time block that tells me that I'm available to my clients from 1 to 4 every single day. And that works really well for me. But whenever a client will try that, they're like, oh, well, I didn't do what I said I would do, or I didn't actually use the time the way I blocked it. So time blocking doesn't work for me. And I think that this is just one of the time hacks that are out there. But with just, instead of jumping into here's all these techniques you can Google, it's more about why don't we use the time, even if we have a plan, the way we want it to?
Yeah, what a great question. I always say that the quality of your business at the end of the day is going to only ever match the quality of the questions that you're asking yourself. And the same applies to your time and to your day and to your schedule. So like you said, like you say, I'm a time blocker. I think that it's useful to have a sort of self-concept or an identity when it comes to your time and your relationship with time. And often what I see is the biggest thing getting in the way isn't necessarily that the person has kids or that the person has, X, Y, and Z type of thing that always interrupts them. It's really that they have a self-concept that's getting in the way of them doing what they want to do. And they'd rather be right about who they are than they would get what they want. And that is in itself is such a huge problem. So if you're going to like grow your business, let's say you want to double your revenue next year and that's your goal, and you have a lot of new actions and things that need to get done in order to do that. But you have this thought, I'm a creative though. I'm spontaneous. My work, I don't know how long my work will really take. So I can't schedule it, or you don't understand. I'm the one that I always giggle at, and I can, call BS on myself, is the one of like, oh, I have little kids at home, because I have little kids at home. And I also was a single mom at one point to my son, which I think allows me to be like, all right, you guys, like if I can do it, you can do it. And the point isn't you have to be a slave and put yourself in a box, but it's like, how can I find a way to think about scheduling, for example, or think about time management in a way that helps me feel free within it? Because if you're a creative, or if you identify as spontaneous and you think of scheduling as rigid and structured, and you naturally think of it as in opposition to who you are, you're not going to be able to do it. You're just not going to be able. And then you're going to feel resentful. You're going to be like, I want to do more, but my time keeps getting away from me. And we tell these stories, right? Like, what does that even mean? My time got away from me. What happened is that you didn't do what you said you were going to do. And you didn't make it easy for yourself because you didn't make any decisions in advance, which is essentially how I define scheduling. There's so many different ways to do it, but scheduling to me is about making decisions in advance about what you're going to do, and then partnering with the self-concept of being an advanced decision maker. And that's what I teach my clients how to do, which is like, okay, you are going to schedule, right? I have a specific process for scheduling. However, I'm very clear about it being more about you asking yourself high quality questions about how you want to spend your day, and then experimenting and tweaking it until it works for you. But then once you're in your day, you're not entitled to everything going according to plan. You may have scheduled for you to be in the car and at your destination by 9:30, but then at 9 o'clock, you see that your car actually had snow on it and you didn't factor it in. And you have to like now shovel, and you're like, oh, okay, now we're going to be a little bit late. You're like, see, the whole day go out. No. Okay. What do I want to do now? Deciding there's nothing that the day can't throw me that I can't handle, because I'm someone who just makes decisions quickly. I'm going to make a new decision, and I'm also future focused, right? These are self concepts that I have. Like, I'm very results oriented. I'm future focused. I'm not attached to anything going the way that I planned it to go. And I don't think of it as a waste of time that I scheduled. I'm like, oh, okay, now I kind of know these are the things I want to get done today, which things are going to, I call it a TBS list, right? To be scheduled list, which things are going back on the TBS list and which things do I kind of want to just shift the day, make the decision, have my own back, and then go with it. Right.
I love this. I think with what you're saying a lot about like identity work when it comes to time, like there's so much of being able to, like the excuses that you were like, quote unquote excuses. I don't have children, but like excuses of saying, oh, I have two small kids, so I can't do the things for myself, or having that opportunity. Like when I will have a client who is a mom going, what if you use this as an opportunity to show your kids that there's always enough time for you? And even too, one of my favorite stories with clients was that she was like, I can't go for walks, or I can't do this stuff just for myself. I'm like, what if every like you bring them on walks, like, and then today mom's going to go by herself and you hang out with dad, like you're just like showing them what the process is. I'm like, it's going to take a second for them to get on board, just like it is for us as adults to get on board with a new routine. But the idea is like, we do have that control. I love also too, you were saying about how a time box can feel rigid to the quote unquote spontaneous person. And I'm going to throw this out there. I'm like a manifesting generator. I also like a Gemini sun, and I'm a Capricorn moon. So I'm always got a little bit of both. I like a little bit of structure. I have those things, but I think this is what it ultimately gets into, or at least around my community, is this idea of feminine and masculine. Have you
absolutely
talked a lot about these energies?
Yes.
I think there was a moment, I want to say during COVID, where a lot of these females who were hustlers and like push themselves, like type A people, were like, oh, what is my feminine? What is it? And like being able to really enjoy like not feeling that rigidity that they may assume is like having a system and being more masculine in that way. But what I found after my own journey of that is going like, wait, but structure like allows me to be free. Like,
yes.
Being like allowing my energy to be spontaneous also comes with having to make tons of decisions all the time in the moment, instead of going like, oh, I can just like flow into what I've prepped for myself, and my feminine will allow me to be compassionate when it doesn't go exactly to plan, but I can come right back on top of it. So I think what you were saying in there is, one, we can never run away from identity work. Like it's always going to be there.
Comes back to it.
How structure and free energy gets to work together.
You're spot on. I think that also just a little bit about me, right? I'm a Pisces. I'm a go with the flow girl. I feel very much, I'm an intuitive. I like to make decisions in the moment. I grew up in a very spontaneous household. In fact, my parents literally just walked in from Miami. They were like waving to me from the window and I'm like, hi, right? And I grew up in a household where my parents were very young when they had me, 19 and 21. And they were in college. They were young kids, and we kind of were spontaneous all the time. And as that was how I grew up, I identified being spontaneous as being fun. So when I became an adult and started thinking about like what my goals were and seeing how much structure I could see how it would help me, I was like, ugh, but then I just have to be less fun, right? It was like a huge, like, the identity struggle for me was like, how can I stay fun and like have the time management system that I want, right? Like, can I make systems fun? And I just said, I'm up to the challenge. Like, I love the challenge. And when you said like, I'm a time blocker, I was like, what am I? I would say I'm a time hacker. Like, I think of how can I create a structure and then be like, ooh, I'm going to break every rule that I set for myself and still get everything done. And I think that like, I don't feel at all restricted by my day. I set it out. I put it there. And then I try and make it a game. I'm like, okay, well, I have this 15 minutes. What if I could do it in 10 minutes and then sit on my porch swing for 5 minutes? Ooh, what if I actually just move this? And I never, ever, ever do my schedule exactly the way it is. However, I love the freedom of knowing that if a girlfriend of mine recently just called me in the middle of my day, and she doesn't usually call me during the day. So I was like, I feel like I should pick this up. I had a full schedule and really like didn't have the time. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And she just really needed to talk. And I wanted to be there for her. And I could see just by looking down at my calendar, I knew exactly what I could move and exactly to not feel stressed out and then therefore resentful of the conversation. I could really enjoy being a friend because I could see very quickly within 1 minute how I would be able to get the same results without having to abide by my schedule in that day. And that type of freedom and like that type of that those are the things that I think before I became a scheduler, like, and I was like, oh, but it just isn't me. I really wasn't owning up to all of the negatives. Like I could see that, okay, I wasn't getting things done as quickly as I wanted. But other than that, what I wasn't admitting to is that I was actually thinking about all of those things anyway. Even if I wasn't doing them, my brain was so cluttered. I really felt so much more overwhelmed. And now I just think less. I decide more. And then I have to think about it less. There's so much more room in my brain for activities.
My gosh, I just want to requote that: think less, decide more, and enjoy. Like that's the three. And I will say that has to be the number one piece of whenever like a client goes, I don't use my time well, and then I'm like, all right, let's block it out, let's figure it out. Is that the exact next piece is like, I didn't do it perfectly, I'm no good at time. And I think that this is where I want to say it's perfectionism. I want to say that's what it ends up being.
Yeah.
Is that if I like you give somebody a strategy, a hack, something to try, and if they don't do it 100%, that means they're no good at it. And I really wanted to come back to this of going like, if it's supposed to be there to support you, and one, if it's not working, like there's an opportunity for you to make an adjustment. Maybe the whatever you blocked off for yourself doesn't naturally fit with your natural energy. But also on the other end of the spectrum is we got to walk into any of these things with compassion. What's the goal? What's the purpose? But also going like, I am the master of my time. Like we want to control so many things in our life and we can't, but we can control our time. We can control how like exactly like going, you know what? I do have meetings on the calendar, but does my friend right now, and I'm making the choice that she's more important because I can feel that this is important. That's getting to control your time and also getting to control any energy of guilt or shame that would come from not perfectly hitting things or not getting this specific things done as they're supposed to.
Yeah. I think one of the strategies that I use is called just like make a decision. And then part 2 of it is then have your own back. Because that's the part that people don't do. Like even people who are spontaneous, like you make decisions all day, right? That's what we do as human beings. But how much of your time are you then spending being like, but should I do this now or should I do that now? It's like you're in constant like, well, had I done that first, I would have XYZ. Like, oh, if I wasn't so slow, if I didn't work out this morning and I just got the work done, then I wouldn't have to push off this. That it's like having your own back on the fact that the past is perfect and that in the future, there's always plenty of time to create everything that you want to create. Like those deep foundational beliefs about yourself, about being in control, about time. It's like I would say that most people, if they had to say the thing that comes out of their mouth the most about time is like I'm so busy, or I just like not enough hours in the day, or like things are just crazy right now. Yeah. Right. Like those 3 sentences I hear people say, and it's so normal that no one would ever be like, what do you mean? Everyone's like, yeah, I get it. Like, right. Like it's a
badge of honor to say that. It's a badge of honor to say you're busy or things are crazy. It's like that means that like you're a high value person or something. It's like it's become that equal mantra of sorts.
And
Versus,
so how do we flip it? Like, what would be the flip for you? Like, what is something that you say about time?
I feel like what would be the like thinking about like I mean I say like I'm full like that like instead of saying I'm busy I'll be like I'm full and
Mm.
like today feels full and I usually I like to look at it in a way, especially for me being an entrepreneur for the last 6 years, like the difference between full on my calendar if I was on the corporate side of things to now is like I'm feeling fulfilled. Like it's I have a
Yeah.
full schedule, but it's filled with exactly what I want it to be filled with. So I am
Yeah.
full. And but like even too, if someone's like, "Oh, you seem so busy, so I don't want to like bother you," I'll be like, "But you're always going to be the thing that I would prefer to have on my like being able to think about
Yeah.
I always have the time for the right things. Maybe that's my switch.
Mm.
I always have the time for the right things.
I got when I was like back when I was like a traveling hippie in Spain. This is like
Where were you in
earlier.
Spain? Wait, hold on. I studied abroad in Spain. I need to know now because I was in like Madrid was a favorite, but I studied abroad in Toledo. But I
Oh, I
spent
was in
like 2 months there.
Sevilla.
Oh, so yeah,
In
I did
Sevilla.
visit there. I did visit
Oh
there.
my
Lovely.
goodness. It's like a traveling back in time, honestly, instead of traveling to another place. It was, yeah, just a beautiful part of my life. But while I was there, I was at a discoteca and they were passing out free swag and they were passing out. One of them was like this wallet and it said, lo importante es saber qué es lo importante. And even at the time, I was like, that it just means the important thing is to know what the important thing is.
Mm,
And it it's kind of a mantra of mine. It's like it's always does your calendar actually match your core values? If what you're saying is that my family is important to me, or if what you're saying is like fun is a core value of mine, how many hours of fun are on your calendar? And I like to be able to look at my calendar and see that, like, oh, I am going on a what like people say whatever like date nights with their spouse or whatever, and I realize that some people are in jobs or in certain seasons where maybe it's not going to always match, but and from a zoomed out perspective, or like can you get it within a day, like a little bit here and there of everything that really really matters to you. And if you're telling yourself the story that you can't, that's not going to change.
absolutely.
your
Absolutely.
your time as a reflection, a direct reflection of what you believe is possible for you.
But again, like I think that's the big thing. Is it like what in a she's defining worthiness. Like what do you like starting I think that's always the for any of my clients that are like, I just can't see myself making this amount of money. I can't see myself in having that space. It's like, okay, but that means that you don't give it to yourself now in its small form of way. Exactly what you're saying. Like, if your core value is peace, if you're like wanting to feel peaceful, wanting to feel fulfilled, and then you look at your calendar and it's full of obligations versus things you choose. And in general, you're not you like there if there's one thing that you always skip, it's your morning meditation, or if it's one thing you always skip is that time with your friend who you love to have that coffee chat with. You're just kind of showing yourself and future self that that is all that you're going to give. Like you're not going to you'll never deserve the that thriving future you who enjoys all those things because you got to give it to yourself now.
Yeah, there's just like such a gap, right, between the life that we want then and what we're believing today is. It just I think sometimes too I come across oftentimes these entrepreneurs who are like big dreamers. It's not that they don't have the dreams, but they have it in this very vague, like one day type thing. And I'm like,
Oh, totally.
I don't see at all how you're making decisions today that would get you there. Like, can you see that? And they'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, well, and part of it is really that socially conditioned like people pleasing tendency that women have, right? I only work with women. I don't know about you.
I'm mostly
Um,
women. I'm mostly women, but yes.
yeah, and so I think we just have a different subset of obstacles that men don't have just because of social conditioning and with the people pleasing. I right now I have a client that just signed on and she is so incredibly bright. She's a doctor, right? She's a doctor, and she has these goals and these dreams of opening up like 6 more locations of the center that she does. The work that they're doing, it's like neurology, the functional fixing of a delay of a right or left brain. So like what we would diagnose as ADHD or dyslexia or anything like that, like functionally fixing it instead of putting your child on Adderall or an adult even.
Yeah, amazing.
And it's so cool. And her work is so important and she knows it. But yet her center was created from another male doctor who inspired her to open the center, and she's helping him with so many of his goals. So she's like, I know, like I want to be doing this and I'm going to, but I have to first this, that, and the other for his business. And I'm like, can you explain to me why? Like, why is that the order of the priorities? And she like was like, what do you mean? You just do for others first and then you do for yourself. Like it hadn't even, and then she was like, yeah, no, I know. But yeah, right. It's like, we have just this, I think it was, who said it? Cheryl Strayed said that women, we have this like eternal, like here to serve button, like on our forehead. And it's not even other people. We do it to ourselves at this point. So it's Absolutely. Like just taking that back. People pleasing is something that is on your calendar. Like I almost want you to, instead of writing the thing that you're doing that you would rather not be doing, just write people pleasing. See how many times it would show up in your calendar if you just wrote like, oh, I'm going to people please at 11 and then I'm going to people please at 8 p.m. that other thing that I said I wasn't going to do. And then
so true. Oh my God. Okay. But this is what's funny because I'm originally from the Midwest. I'm in New York, but I'm originally from the Midwest. And I feel like that is like, I don't know, it's in our cereal every morning. We have like people pleasing is like such an ingrained part of it. And the amount of times that my family and even like some of my friends, like being in New York for a while, like in particular, the number one thing that comes to my brain of I have my do not disturb on when I'm working, or I have my do not disturb on when I'm spending time with my husband or something like that. And like knowing that if they text me, I'll get back to them pretty quickly. And they're like, it's really rude that you do that. It's so rude. And I'm like, wait, what? Was it urgent? Was it an emergency? Like, what's happening? And like, I was like, you got to be available to me. I'm your family. And there's this idea of like, but you call me in the middle of meetings. You call me all the time, and like feeling this need. And even like, I will say early on, there was this shame and this guilt going like, oh, it's my brother, it's my mother. Like I need to answer these things. And when it came down to it, like the longer I did it, then my brother started adding do not disturb. She's like, you get a lot of work done. I'm like, yeah, because I don't have to stop. And certain things, always your energy is going to shift. So this idea of people pleasing is such a big one. It's like, it has to be the largest. And I really hate, and I'm just going to say this, I really hate that womanhood somehow gets equated to like martyrdom. Like, well, how much can we give to others instead of filling our own cup? And I know that there's this phrase or metaphor, like fill your own cup first and then everyone gets the spillover. But like actually implementing that sometimes can cause shifts in relationships, and that scares us so much until you realize that the people that want to see you be really, like, they want to see you happy are going to stay on board no matter what. So I think there's a sense of like how hard that switch can be.
I mean, I could really go off on people pleasing, but what I will say as it relates to time is just that we're going to continue to do it if you think of it as a good quality in yourself, right? And so if you want to stop the action, but our thoughts create our feelings drive our actions produce our result. And a lot of people will be like, help me change this action. And I'd be like, okay, well, we have to change the thought first, because otherwise you're just going to be in misalignment and you're going to feel uncomfortable and it's not going to stick long term, right? You need to fundamentally change the way you think about people pleasing. And the simplest way that I can put it is that people pleasing is lying. It's saying that it's a yes when it's a no. It creates resentment in your relationships because you are showing up to things and then feeling like, oh, I really am here out of obligation and it's not aligned for me. And then you end up subtly breaking down your relationship with the person that you're people pleasing. And it's not that person's fault for asking you. It's your fault for saying yes when it's a no. So like,
absolutely.
In business, I had this one client, I always use this example because it cracks me up. She was like she had a storefront and she was starting to get resentful of like the Boy Scouts and like anyone who would come in and be like, hey, would you donate to blah, blah, blah thing? Because she felt like she had to do it, or she felt like she was a bitch if she said no, right? I don't know if we're allowed to curse on this. But,
of course you can. Of course you can.
And so she was like, oh, those are my only two options, right? I either need to be this mean, bad person who doesn't care about XYZ cause, or I need to mortgage my business essentially and make it so that I'm overspending in a way that's not aligned, right? She's like, I want to be a giving person, but also like, can people just like not come in? Like, what do I do? How do I create this? And I'm like, we want to control the outside world so that we can feel better instead of saying, all right, how do I instead create intentionally, like, she said, like, I want to be a giving person. So I said, okay, how much? How much money do you want to give in total in the year? So we created a giving budget for her for the year of what made sense. And then it creatively, she just started getting more and more inspired by this. She'd be like, okay, actually, I don't want to just give cash because that doesn't really make sense for my business. I would be glad to donate in some cases to gift cards to my shop. And then I could actually double the budget because it's not costing me the cost of the gift card. It's costing me the cost of the goods, right? So I could have a more generous budget, but it would be donating gift cards. And then potentially I could be getting clients from this. And then she was like, okay. But then what happened is like by April, it was like her whole budget was spent because she just said yes to everyone. So we're like, okay, like maybe let's break it up by quarter and you just have a quarterly budget. And then when people come in, you say like, okay, actually we do have budget this quarter. Or you could say, oh, my quarterly givings budget has already been allocated. But if you come back on April 1st, we'd be glad to donate. And it was so clean and clear, and she was in control. So it's like, how can we find ways to think not about what other people are going to think and what other people are going to feel and what other people are going to do, and instead get really intentional about like, when you put on do not disturb, it's not like you're just saying, I don't want to talk to my mom and my brother again, ever. You're saying, I want to talk to my mom and my brother in the evenings when I'm signed off, on the weekends. I want to talk to them when I'm not on a meeting. And you can get intentional and be like, all right, I'm going to call my mom at 5 p.m.
where I have you're giving my full attention. I'm not trying to multitask and all the things. It's so true. And again, like exactly what you were just saying about your client is it was structure, just a little bit of structure allowed her to donate freely and feel good about it and then what that looked like. And I think that the number one thing the number one thing that has been said to me about people pleasing that had me go like kind of like go, oh, like that's that, like it had to be like stop in my tracks, was people pleasing is actually manipulative. You are like, just like you were saying, it's a lie, but like you are manipulating someone else to believe that you are one person when you are resenting them all the way through. And it's just that idea like absolutely hit me in a way of going, oh, okay. So exactly with what you were sharing is like, how can we decide who we are first? And then our worlds around us are going to shift to what that looks like. So whether it's how much money you give, whether it's how available you are, whether it's how strongly you hit your time blocks, whatever it might be, it's going like, if we start from here, we can make better decisions. And we may end up with the final result of what everyone thinks of us the way we wanted to be thought of as a people pleaser, but we're actually pleasing ourselves first. We're making ourselves happy in the process.
Yeah. And I think that part's the hardest part, right? Because we're just like fundamentally a lot of deep ingrained people pleasers feel like that's not okay. That's just not okay. I can't take care of myself first. That's selfish. That is whatever. And that's the toughest part. But I'm always trying to look at it of like, really, how is it the best way to serve others? Like if really service is so important to you as a core value, and it is to me, I'm thinking like, what's the best way that I love to serve people? And in the way that I also like to receive, like I would never ask someone who I know or who I believe to be a people pleaser for a favor.
Oh, yeah.
And here's why, is because I don't want to secretly wonder if they're saying yes just because I asked them and they feel like they have to, or I want to only have people doing things for me because it really works. I don't want them to feel like that way. If let's say I ask for a favor and then I have to cancel something, I don't want someone to be like, oh, well, I canceled my thing and it wasn't really, it's like, well, why did you say yes to that in the first place? No, only I said, if you are free, if you're available, if you can accommodate for this. So on the other side, I always just think like, it's a gift when you're such an honest and a person of integrity. It's a gift to your friends and family because they really feel like they can trust that you are telling them the truth. It just feels safe to them.
Believe them at their word. And I think that's such a big part of it too. I love that though.
Mm-hmm.
So putting this into context, like we're sharing little pieces about like boundaries that we implement and like really being honoring like who we are first. If you had to kind of give someone like a bit of a checklist, let's say, about walking into their day of how they, if I want to use my day today more effectively, whether they have time blocks or not, like what kind of what would be a few things you'd give somebody so that they use their time even better?
Yeah. So number one is, so the title of my podcast is called Sincerely Future You. And so what that really is about, so if it's specific to your business, you have to have some point in time where you have a concrete result that you want to arrive at. So you have to have a goal essentially, right? Like what is the goal and by when? It sounds so basic, but if most people are trying to, when they come to me, are trying to build their business in this very like one foot in front of the other, like very like, I just need more clients and more money. And it's so vague and it feels like such a drag and they feel far away because they don't even know what they're aiming towards exactly, other than more. And I recommend instead, I like a year-long goal that feels impossible, a month-long goal that you could break down into an action plan.
I love that.
Right. So having the goal and having the clear, concrete deadlines of by when and what is the result by when, not just like, what do I want to do by when, but why? Like if people are like, okay, I just want to like post more on social media. I'm like, okay, like be more basic. Like why?
That was the best eye roll.
I can't. I have a very like interesting relationship with social media. Like I love it in terms of it's fun for me to share. I love to just like share ideas and thoughts freely, but I don't spend much time on there other than to share. And then I also don't share with the intention of getting more likes or followers. Like
which means you have a good relationship. That means you have a strong relationship with social, that you're posting and not consuming constantly. Like this is a conversation for another time, but that means you've got a great relationship with social media.
Thank you. I think that I do. Yeah. And every once in a while I am like checking in. I'm like, like what was the purpose of this? Or like, do I need to, and I'll do little detoxes here and there of like certain habits, but generally that's my relationship with social media. But what I think that does is I have like some people will look and say, I have a little over 3,000 followers, and people will be like, okay, like I think my goal is like 10,000 followers. I'm like, why? Like, what would that mean for your particular business? Now, if you have a business that you have a low ticket offer, you sell like a product that's $12 or something like that, you may need a bigger audience naturally to reach some of your goals. I don't. I have a high ticket offer and I have a service business. I actually can only work with a certain number of people. My email list, I make sure that it's more important that it's organically growing and that I'm engaging and connecting with people who are the right audience than I care. Right. So yeah, that is really important too, of knowing like, what is the goal and why am I spending my time?
Have a true meaning behind it, not just the number, like, cause it'd be nice. And then like that, like more.
Yeah. I'll feel more official and it's what business owners do. Well, why? Like what? Just like get to the bottom of it. Right. To me, it's always just like, I understand that more followers generally means more potential clients, but I have found that you can make several hundreds of thousands of dollars with a very small list and all of the things. That's been my experience.
Absolutely. We're in a team together. You don't have to have a huge audience.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah. And so, right, understanding the why behind your goals and making sure that the way that you're showing up is actually going to create the result that you care about, so that there's like not a mismatch. That's why I always call it like reverse engineering that goal. So if you have a goal by the end of 30 days to have X number of consults, okay, well, you can't just post 30 times. That's not going to necessarily create a consult. But what does create a consult? What are those actions, and what do you need to test, and what would feel like it's going to overwhelm the goal instead of you being overwhelmed by the goal? Like, what are the actions that would, and then also, again, in your actions, right? Like making sure that you are also feeling the way you want to feel throughout that day. So like, there are certain actions that I know probably work for businesses that I am never interested in doing because it doesn't sound fun to me. And I'm just not interested.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather put a hot poker in my eye. Like, I'm just not interested forever. So
the idea, but what you're saying though with this idea is that, okay, you make sure you have your monthly goal in mind walking into the day, and then go and remind yourself of the why behind that. Make sure you structure your day to feel good about it, but also aligning with that goal, making sure that your schedule looks that way. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I mean, the actual action items that I have my clients do is like understand what your annual goal is that you're shooting for. Then have a 30-day plan, like set the 30-day goal that will ultimately help you build towards that year goal, and then schedule your days. Beautiful. And that's what I do. And then when I'm looking at my days and I'm showing up in my days, all of that is about experimenting and collecting failures. Like it is not, I use those words very regularly because of what you said. People's tendencies are to go and then feel like I didn't do it perfectly and then giving up. So like the whole process of hitting a goal looks like collecting failures over and over and over and over and over again and not hitting the goal. Like sometimes I've had people that their goal in my program is to collect 4 specific failures a month, and they have literally never hit the goal. They've collected failures on every single one of their goals, and then they've hit their impossible goal. How is that possible? But that is more often what I see is the way. It's like, okay, you've never hit 10 consults in a month, but you got 4 consults. And then of those 4 consults, you booked 1 client, and you think that that's not a lot because you're looking at the numbers. But if you book 1 client this month and then you book 2 out of those 5 the next month, and then you have book 1 out of 3, and then you have 5 clients, and then they just refer you a client, and then suddenly you have 6 clients when you had 0. That is how businesses are built. It's not linear.
I'm like literally just thinking about the mindset switch of like, I'm collecting failures this month to reach the big goal. I love that. So in the spirit of the new year, what's your 2024 goal? What's the big, whether it's the big one or your monthly goal, what's a goal that you have right now and for the year?
Yeah. So annually I go back and forth each year between a time goal and a money goal. So this past year was about time. It was about, I wanted to basically, I think my goal was 250K. And then I wanted to make sure that I said yes to every single one of the things I wanted to do with my kids. So being craft mom, going on all the field trips, I took a vacation in Costa Rica with my family. I wanted to be able to go to every wedding and take lots of time off. I had a baby last year, so I, have a little one at home, and I wanted to be able to take the time to work out and to really feel like myself again. And just like I was like, time was the goal, but the focus of the year. I feel like I did that really well in 2023, maintained my business in terms of like those goals. Obviously, I still had like business goals, but then this next year, we're doubling. So 500K is the goal. Ooh. Now it's like more of a shift into money. And I want to like I think my daughter will end up going into a 3-day a week like little Spanish immersion preschool, and so I'll have a little bit more of built-in time. My son's in first grade, so I have just more built-in time now to give back into the business. So I'm psyched about it. I'm a bit of a workaholic when I want to, just because I love what I do.
When you enjoy what you do, workaholic is more like this is how I choose to spend my time. I think that's, I love that. So 500K for Jessica coming into 2024. I love that.
It's already done. Sincerely, future me.
Perfect tagline. That's perfect. I think just on the subject of goals is that I have had a few clients, I think it might be from other coaches or whatever, they'll come in and they'll say, when I don't reach, like, I don't like to set goals because if I don't reach them, that makes me less than. And I maybe it's just me, and I want to, like, I will say I love, like, I think curiosity is a core piece for me. Like if something doesn't go right, I'm like, what do I do different next time? Not, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, there's never that feeling. But I think with goals, it's just this idea, like, there's a milestone when, like, there's a place to hit. If you don't hit it, you go like, what got in the way? What happened? Like, or what made me so unmotivated to hit this each and every day? How do I change that? I've tried that before. Like, it's just like, I have these, I naturally am going to ask the questions. Thank you, journalism degree or whatever it came from. But in general, like, I think that when someone tells me they're scared to make goals, my usual response is like, so you're scared of success. so you're scared of having something down the line that's going to pull you instead of pushing yourself to this, intention or energy you want to have all the time. Like, again, like, both intentions and energies are helpful, but if I don't have a solid place, concrete goal, it's going to make it hard. So what would you say to someone that says, like, they don't want to set goals for themselves? They think it's
I hear it all the time. And I think I hear it less just because it's what I do and people know that they're going to come into my container and they're going to have to do that, or what are you here for? But when I hear people say, like, I want to come in, but I'm scared because of XYZ, I don't think that anyone's actually, like, really scared of success. What they're scared of is having to actually feel a negative emotion that they're scared they're not going to come out of, or that they can't handle. And it's this weirdest thing. Human beings, we're always, as a species, taking action to go towards a positive emotion or away from a negative emotion. And in terms of success, and especially as an entrepreneur, it comes down to, are you willing to feel whatever it takes to have your dream life and your dream future?
It's so true.
And you are going to have to feel a lot of things that you've never felt before, deeply. And that is the human experience. And if you want a big life, not just a big business, if you want a big life, it's like opening up the door all the way. All the positive and all the negative is going to come in. And are you up for it? And for me, it's just 2 thumbs way up. Like, bring it on. I'm willing to fail as much as it takes. And I'm willing to feel as awkward or embarrassed or fearful or challenged as it takes to be the version of me that I know that I'm capable of being. And I think a more useful way of spending our time, and a more useful question, is like, can I believe so deeply in a future with zero evidence that it's possible, and be okay with letting the reality just catch up with the vision?
I love this. She just took me to church. I was over. I have a friend. I wanted to be like, yes, I'm fully. But I love this. I think the only way we feel happy and we see our lives as dream lives is because we have the moments that we're having to go deeper and understand the negative sides of us and how we can release those things. Like, having, like, when someone says, I want to be an entrepreneur, is exactly what you said. You're also checking the line of really understanding yourself, really understanding your feelings. Emotional mastery has got to be an essential part of this journey for you. And I think everything you just said, preach. Hopefully listening into this, that when you're thinking about what your goals are for the year, that you hear that and be able to embrace all the facets that life is going to be throwing at you. I feel like I want to keep talking, but I know we're coming up to that hour here. So I wanted to just ask, what would you say feeling or being limitless means to you?
To me, it's kind of the sentence I just said last. Like being limitless is believing in any future, regardless of what my present evidence says.
I love that.
And for me, like I have had experiences in my life where I came up against so much evidence that what I wanted was just not possible. And I didn't even have an example out there of another person overcoming what I was in. And I was like, I don't care. I just am willing. Like that is all limits, right? It's like you can only do what you've seen out there in the world. Like a human race would never evolve. There would never be anything new, right? Are you willing to be the first person that you have ever seen do something or feel something or create something or become something?
I love that. Perfect. Beautiful. Jessica, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all about what you do. How can we stay in touch with you?
Please stay in touch. I hang out mostly over on the Insta webs. So you can find me on Instagram at Jess McKinley Uyeno. That's JESS McKinley McKinley. Uyeno. This part's a little bit Japanese and confusing. Uyeno. And also, of course, you can come if you vibe with the things that I'm saying and you want to hear more about the future stuff, come and listen to my podcast, Sincerely Future You.
Beautiful. Amazing. Jess, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. This was such a lovely interlude in my day. Talk about fun on my calendar.
Perfect. Same.
Thanks, Jamie. Thank you guys for listening.